Juneteenth began as a Texas tradition because the official event it's named after occurred in Galveston, Texas. So I'm sure at the very least of the basic U.S. school public information you were taught is that President Abraham Lincoln, quote unquote, freed the slaves. And maybe you'll remember that that documentation is called the Emancipation Proclamation. So he issued that. And essentially I was taught that it was issued and that the slaves are free. That's basically the end of the conversation. Yay, no more slavery, blah, blah, blah. Emancipation Proclamation states that all persons held as slaves within the rebellious states are and henceforward shall be free. So yay, right? We did it. No, that was not even the case. So the Emancipation Proclamation was issued on January 1st, 1863, but there was nothing really to enforce all these southern slave owners to follow it because there wasn't a strong Union presence in the South. And why would they follow this thing that says that slaves are free if slaves are guests of their money and this was their property? They paid for us, they love to use us. So why would they listen? So most plantations carried on business as usual, and Juneteenth signifies June 19th, 1865, when the Union Army rode into Galveston, Texas to reinforce the Emancipation Proclamation and let the slaves know. Can you believe that 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was issued, the slaves were still being held as slaves, and the slaves had no clue that they should have been free? 2 extra years of mistreatment and labor, because it's not like today news didn't travel, and also who was going to tell the slaves? They didn't have access to the newspapers, they didn't have access to the couriers, they didn't have access to town square where they say the news. So obviously master was not going to tell them. So many people say Juneteenth is a holiday for the end of slavery, but it's more than that, because slavery should have already legally ended. Slavery did legally end 2 years ago. It's crazy how these things are allowed to happen, and this is just the history of this country. And don't even get me started on how it's never talked about how Mississippi only finally legally abolished slavery, which was done by finally ratifying the 13th Amendment in 2013. Yes, you heard me right. 7 years ago, 2013. Up until then, the state of Mississippi had still never submitted the required documentation to ratify the 13th Amendment, meaning slavery was not legally abolished, and legally plantation owners were allowed to own slaves in Mississippi all that time. The more you look into our nation's history, which I strongly urge everyone watching this to do, the more you'll be shocked. 148 years after finally slavery was officially and legally abolished in Mississippi. That is why you will never catch me in Mississippi, because I do not want to die. But yeah, and I'm not surprised though, because the economy of Mississippi depends on slave labor, and it benefited greatly from slave labor and having slaves. And it's just ridiculous how all this time it was still legally allowed. They say, technical oversight, but that's ridiculous. But back to Juneteenth. Juneteenth is the oldest nationally celebrated commemoration of the ending of slavery in the United States. Reports say that the reaction to the news back then ranged from pure shock to jubilation, and even though they had nowhere to go and they owned nothing of themselves, they felt like leaving the plantations as soon as possible will be the first step of their freedom. The North was obviously the dream destination for many, but others yearned to find the family that they had been separated from for so many years ago. So they went to different states in the South, such as Louisiana and other neighboring states, to try to reconnect and find their long-lost family members. And unfortunately for them, their new realities of being freed blacks was not all smiles and happiness. It was a long, hard road, and as you can see from what's happening today, it is not over yet. Black people are still at the very bottom of the barrel in this country, in every country, all over the world. Even in our own continent of Africa, where we came from, we still don't have the power in every country. But Juneteenth is a celebration, and it's celebrated in so many different ways, from rodeos to barbecues to cookouts to parties to community events and rallies. Juneteenth almost always focuses on the education and self-improvement of the people, of Black people. We look back at our history and we think, how can we learn? How can we improve? How can we celebrate each other? And this year Even though we are in quarantine, the Black voice is educating louder than ever, screaming louder than ever. And that's why I wanted to make this video, to educate all of you guys. And also, I recommend you guys watch the Blackish episode of Juneteenth. I'll have the exact episode number listed below, but I watched that and it was a very good episode. And I also recommend you guys to do more research on your own about Juneteenth and about the real history of what happened in this country. Because what we learn in school is not what actually happened. Sadly, even myself, I only learned about Juneteenth maybe about 2 years ago because I was not taught this in school. My parents are immigrants, they didn't know about Juneteenth either. It's not something that we've ever celebrated, but I'm urging us to celebrate this Friday. And so, I want all of you guys to take the next step and let me know, did you know about Juneteenth before? Does your family celebrate Juneteenth? How do you guys celebrate it if you do? And what you're planning to do for Juneteenth now that you know. But I believe that the future of Juneteenth is looking brighter than ever, and it will never be forgotten now. Because we will speak about it for the rest of our lives, and we will not be silenced. It started in Texas as a holiday for them, and it grew, and throughout time, I know it'll be bigger than ever. And although it is fortunately a national holiday in many states, it is not a federal holiday yet. I have hopes that soon it'll become a federally recognized holiday and it'll be taught in every single school across the world. So that is my little talk about Juneteenth, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys learned something. Make sure to subscribe and tune in for the next one, and let me know in the comments what you guys thought. As always, you guys, stay safe, stay blessed, wash your hands, wear a mask, and Black Lives Matter.